Hi, my name is Tracy Milliar, and this is my Activating for Change YouTube video response, EEC 3009, Subunit 4.3. The position statement I chose was Learning to Read and Write Developmentally Appropriate Practices for Young Children. Learning to read and write developmentally appropriate practices for young children is a statement that I completely agree with. Learning to read and write is critical to a child's success in school and later in life. One of the best predictors of whether a child will function competently in school and go on to contribute actively in our increasingly literate society is the level which the child progresses in reading and writing. This is an essential skill for every student, and this position statement outlines the responsibility of every school, early childhood programs, families, and communities to make sure that our children are successful and competent in the areas of reading and writing. Yes, you're probably wondering why. Why is this a statement? It's obvious that it's important for children to know how to read and write. But at the time this statement was written, the IRA and the NACI believe that this position statement will contribute significantly to the improvement in the practice and development of supporting educational policies. So this statement was needed at the time for these several reasons. The first reason being that it's essential and urgent to teach children to read and write competently, enabling them to achieve today's high standards of literacy. Although the United States enjoys the highest literacy rate in its history, society now expects virtually everyone in the population to function beyond the minimum standards of literacy. Today, the definition of basic proficiency in literacy calls for a fairly high standard of reading, comprehension, and analysis. The main reason is that literacy requires most jobs have increased significantly and are expected to increase further in the future. Communications that in the past were verbal, by phone or in person, now demand reading and writing messages sent by electronic mail, internet, or fax, as well as printed documents. The second reason is with the increasing variation among young children in our programs and schools, teaching today has become more challenging. Experienced teachers throughout the United States report that children they teach today are more diverse in their backgrounds, experiences, and abilities than those were taught in the past. Kindergarten classes now include children who have been in a group setting for 3 or 4 years, as well as children who are participating for the first time in an organized early childhood program. Classes include both children with identified disabilities and children with exceptional abilities. Children who are already independent readers and children who are just beginning to acquire some basic literacy knowledge and skills. Children in a group may speak different languages at varying levels of proficiency. Because of these individual and experimental variations, it is common to find within a kindergarten classroom a 5-year range in children's literacy related to skills and functioning. Another reason is that among many early childhood teachers, a maturiness view of young children's development persists despite much evidence to the contrary. A readiness view of reading development assumes that there is a specific time in the early childhood years when teaching and reading should begin. It also assumes that physical and neurological maturation alone prepare the child to take advantage of instruction in reading and writing. The readiness perspective implies that until children reach a certain stage of maturity, all exposure to reading and writing except perhaps being read stories, is a waste of time or even potentially harmful. Experiments throughout the early childhood years, birth through age 8, affect the development of literacy. These experiences constantly interact with characteristics of individual children to determine the level of literacy skills a child ultimately achieves. Failing to give children literacy experiences until they are at school age can severely limit the reading and writing levels they ultimately attain. Other reasons that the reason why this statement is so critical and the reason why it was made is that recognizing the early beginnings of literacy acquisition too often has resulted in the use of inappropriate teaching practices suited to older children or adults, perhaps, but ineffective with children in preschool, kindergarten, and early grades. Also, current policies and resources are inadequate in ensuring that preschool and primary teachers are qualified to support the literacy development of all children. These are reasons, along with many others. I feel that working in the early education childhood field, specifically with VPK, that book knowledge, just being aware of the concept, the parts of the book, print knowledge, seeing words, it all promotes literacy. It's so important that children are in a literacy-rich environment. They're just going to strive later on, and it's beginning to help them to build the foundation that they will need to carry on in the further grade levels. Learning how to read is just a core foundation. If a child can grasp that concept, other areas of study will become a much easier transition for them because there's reading in every subject. Just a lot of exposure. And what I'm going to talk about in the next slide is the strategies that this statement has actually outlined for success. So NACE outlined basically strategies for success, things that teachers, parents, educators, administrators, people within a community can use for children in the early stages of development for their success in reading and writing. So the first thing is reading aloud to children. It's so important to read to children. It just helps them gain vocabulary. It helps them with language development. It gives them that early literacy skills that they need to progress. Just basically teaching a child about the parts of the book. Oh, this is the front cover, the back cover, the spine, the pages. Getting them familiarized with text is so important to their success, and they're just going to go further. Exposure to and concepts about print. So same thing, books, seeing their name in print or on magazines, or having them look at newspaper, just exposing them to a lot of different print, whether you're out and about. Oh, there's a stop sign. All of those experiences are going to help the children become successful later on in reading and writing. A child that is not exposed and doesn't have any literacy-rich experiences is really going to struggle and have a hard time transitioning grade to grade, and they most likely will fall behind and they will require additional help. Phonemic awareness, invented spelling, vocabulary development, and repeated readings. So children really do benefit from all these different strategies. These different strategies are used most of the time. Centers and schools that follow these guidelines within the settings, they are used, and the students excel and they do well in them. And a lot of times with the repeated readings, you'll find that if you repeat the same book over and over and the child is very fond of it, they'll begin to pick up that same book and read each page, page by page. And they'll begin to mimic, and just having those experiences is really going to help them form the foundation that they need to be successful in the later grade levels. As you can see, this is simply an illustration of how literacy and reading is at the very core of education. Without these types of experiences, students cannot go on to be successful in other content areas. So reading at home, oral language, access to books, language, all of these are under literacy, and all of these promote literacy. Without these roots, children, it's going to be very difficult for them to be successful. I stand 100% behind this position statement. I think it's so important that children have a love for reading and they enjoy reading. When they pick up that book, it just opens up a whole new world to them. And if they're able to grasp the concept and understand and get those experiences at the early stages of development, going to school, period, just learning any content area will be much more enjoyable to them because they understand and they can read, and it will build and grow confidence in them. So the NACE position statement for knowing how to read and write, they really outline thorough detail about different strategies and different ways of teaching and how we should be implementing this to our children. Well, that concludes the end of my video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.